ha de volver a brillar más el sol. Mariposa, y sé que ya nunca tendré sus caricias, sus besos de amor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our sixth online celebration, 10 by 10, Havana Art Deco Architectural and Design, promoting Copperbridge mission of promotion and educational exchanges through the medium of artistic expression. Tonight, this program is being brought to you by, in collaboration with the Swiss Embassy of Cuba and Jamaica, Miami Center for Architecture and Design, AIA Miami, on Cuba, Art Daily, Havana Deco, the International Coalition of Art Deco Societies, and tonight, I also want to make a special mention to Councilman and Vice Mayor of North Miami, Alec Desamay, for his generous support with our 10 by 10 program, celebrating 10 years of Copperbridge's programming. And so we're very happy to have North Miami with us, since we are, of course, now a North Miami-based nonprofit. At this point, Copperbridge Foundation has, in the last 10 years, worked very closely with architecture. That's one of our specialties. We have done several conferences in Latin America and the Caribbean, 2 world congresses for the International Coalition of Art Deco Society. One in 2012 in Havana, Cuba, and the other just recently in 2019, Rio Platense in Argentina and Uruguay. We have worked on creating documentaries on Francisco Salamone, a great architect from that period in the Pampa in Argentina. We're now currently working on one on Rio Platense. But for me, I think one of our special moments was working with Maria Elena Martín, working on a book on Havana Art Deco Architectural Guide. And she worked with us closely for many years, a friend of Copperbridge. And I'd like to dedicate this 10 by 10 Havana Art Deco programming to her in her honor. She's no longer with us, but always in my heart, in the family of Copperbridge. Tonight we have a very special group for you. I mean, friends again that have worked with Copperbridge for many years: Rosa, Lowinger, Pepe Menéndez, and Universo García. But before I introduce you to them, I'd like to introduce you to my collaborator and co-host this evening, Cheryl Jacobs, the executive vice
EVP.
Yes, EVP, that's right, and executive director of MCAD here in Miami. So please.
Thanks, Gio. Hi, everybody. My name, as Gio said, is Cheryl Jacobs. I'm EVP at the Miami Center for Architecture and Design and AIA Miami, the American Institute of Architects here in Miami. We're so thrilled, as always, to partner with Copperbridge and Gio on these programs, and we're happy to partner with Copperbridge and Gio on these programs, and especially now that we have this ability to, since we can't travel so much, so we have this ability to bring you these programs virtually. So we're thrilled to be able to do that. We have a large group today, and I'm going to ask you to please mute your self and mute your video as well, because it will give us better bandwidth and we'll be able to give you a better program. So and also with our speakers, if you're not speaking, please keep yourself muted. And with that, I'll just tell you a little bit. The Miami Center for Architecture and Design is in downtown Miami, and we bring our community programming around the built environment, and that's why this relationship is so special. So we're happy to connect with you. We hope you will stay connected to us and maybe follow us on social media so you can see the programming that we're doing, because I know a lot of the people online today are not familiar with us. So welcome to everyone. I'm going to take a minute now to introduce our fabulous moderator from LA, Rosa Lowinger, a friend at Rosa is the president of RLA Conservation in LA and Miami.
Oh, yes.
I'm not going to just give you LA. That provides materials conservation services for buildings, monuments, and sculptures. So with that, Rosa, I'd like to bring you in. Take it away.
I am unmuting. Can you hear me? Great. So good evening, I guess. It's afternoon here in California, where I'm coming to you from the unceded traditional lands of the Chumash and Tongva peoples. And I begin my presentation today by offering gratitude and thanks to the Chumash and Tongva communities. I'm going to talk just for a very few minutes because we have some terrific speakers here today. It's a true pleasure to be able to participate with my esteemed colleagues, Universo and Pepe. And what I'd like to just say to kick this off is a couple of words about Art Deco architecture and what is really remarkable about it. But I want to begin first with a deep sense of gratitude to Gio Darter and the Copperbridge Foundation for everything that you have done on behalf of preservation and elevating the presence of Cuban history, architecture, and the visual arts, and all of the arts, if you will, and also to Cheryl Jacobs for all the work that you're doing on behalf of architecture in Miami and its preservation. As a materials conservator, this is a very important combination to me. And we're here to talk today about one of the most extraordinary compendiums of historic buildings in the Western Hemisphere. Havana and Cuba as a whole presents a breadth of built heritage that is really quite remarkable. The country's history is literally readable on the face of these buildings. You can walk through Havana and through Cuba as a whole and really understand a lot about the political, social, and historical structure of the Western Hemisphere. Art Deco is sort of a fulcrum point in the 20th century. It's the division point between traditional and modern, and it kind of teeters on the balance of that. And in Cuba, this was a time when when these buildings that you're about to see and these beautiful design items that you're about to see were made. It was a moment when Cuba's visual and artistic and intellectual class was really grappling with the concept of what does it mean to be Cuban? What is Cubanidad? As the great architect and historian Eduardo Luis Rodriguez says. And you got to think about these buildings that were built in this time period as going up at a moment when that was a key concern for members of the intellectual and artistic classes in Cuba. Now, as I mentioned, and Cheryl mentioned, I'm a materials conservator as well as a writer. I wrote the book on the Tropicana nightclub. But as a materials conservator, I recognize perhaps more than most people that the value in so many of these buildings is in the details. You're going to see beautiful sculpted cornices, terrazzo flooring, lighting fixtures. A lot of the ironwork that you're going to see on some of these buildings was actually designed by Samuel and built by Samuel Yellen, a Philadelphia-based ironworker. there's a very large cross-pollination between Cuba and the United States in this period, back and forth. And these buildings tell us that history. That's why those details are so important. So even though my esteemed colleagues, who I'm going to introduce in a second, are really going to be talking about what makes this architecture unique, I want to invite us all to look carefully at how much of it resides in the actual physical details of these structures, and in Pepe's case, books that he's going to talk about. So, and please do post your questions, because we're hoping to have a lively discussion at the end. And with that, I'd like to introduce my two colleagues. First, my very good friend and frequent collaborator, Universo Garcia. Universo is one of Cuba's most prolific preservation architects. He's been working in this field since the early 1990s. His resume is a mile long, and I invite you to look at it at some other point. I'm going to hit the high points just now. He has a graduate degree and a master's in science from the Institute of Architecture and Constructions of Alma-Ata in the Republic of Kazakhstan. He's worked as a principal architect for a number of different government agencies, including the Ministry of Construction, Atrio from the Ministry of Culture, and is most remarkably known for having done the 1988 to 92 renovation of the Hotel Nacional just right after graduating from his studies. He's also responsible for the renovation of the Hotel Telegrafo, the first iteration of the restoration of the National Art Schools, the Sala White in Matanzas, and one of my personal favorites is the spectacular social as well as architectural renovation project of adapting the Mara Cinema in Santo Suarez to be the headquarters of the Spanish Ballet of Cuba, among many other projects. Universo also is an independent architect who works for private residential owners. He's a professor at the CUJAI and a frequent lecturer on the international circuit, including Docomomo, where he has lectured in the Netherlands, SciArc in Southern California, where I was fortunate to be able to see him lecture a few years ago, and the 2019 Association for Preservation Technology Conference in Miami that I was fortunate to co-chair, and where he presented a wonderful presentation on creating climate change resiliency in Havana, specifically around the northern waterfront. He has a million accolades and awards, and he is a member of the UNIAC. And I do invite you to look on the Copperbridge website for more details of his resume. Pepe Menéndez is a graphic designer who has authored and designed literally a library's worth of volumes. Most notable among them, his book on Enrique Garcia Cabrera, who was perhaps the most important pioneer of 20th century Cuban graphic design. Pepe lectures and presents design workshops around the world: Switzerland, Netherlands, Italy, Ecuador, Japan, France, Germany, to name but a few places. He's written articles on Cuban graphic design for Visual España, Arte Cubano, Revolución y Cultura, La Gaceta de Cuba, A Mano y la Tiza, etc. He's also been a professor of design at the Higher Institute of Design between 1989 and 93. He's also a member of UNIAC, a vice president of the Cuban Photographic Committee, many other accolades that I recommend that you look at. But I also want to say that I know him because he has designed the numerous beautiful art books produced by my good friend, the curator, Cristina Vives, among them José Alberto Figueroa, A Cuban Self-Portrait, I Insulted Flavio Garcia in Havana, and Alexandre Arrechea, The Inevitable Space. I hope one day to write something that is worthy of his design. And now, without further ado, let me turn this over to our first presenter, who will be Universo.
Good evening, everyone. So, from Havana. So first, I would like to thank Gio Darder and Copperbridge Foundation for the opportunity and the invitation to be part of this remarkable event dedicated to celebrate and to discuss about Havana Art Deco. It is, I think, unique opportunity to share with you about what was happening in the beginning of the 20th century. I tried to provide you with a brief tour about the history of those years. And at the end of our presentation, I think we will talk about the future of this issue, about the future of Havana Art Deco. So that was, as Rosa was saying, the beginning of 20th century, when the international trends in fashion had begun to arrive in Havana, and Cuban designers and developers started to master or imitate those trends. It succeeded in covering a wide range of construction programs extensively developed all over the country. But specifically in the capital, in the city of Havana, was a favorable context for the assimilation and for the subsequent development of the modern Art Deco. So my presentation, I would like to dedicate it to the late colleague, architect, professor, theoretic, and researcher, Maria Elena Martín, whose persistent efforts in studying and documenting our rich Art Deco collection allowed to achieve the essential Havana Art Deco architectural guides, among other valuable contributions she made. So I would like to begin from the brief about the assimilation of the modern art. In the late 1920s and early 1930s was the greatest boom of monumental works in Havana, such as the National Capitol, the Centro Asturiano, the National Telephone Company, and the National Hotel, among others, erected in the eclectic style. This became one of the eras of the supreme flourishing of the art and architecture and urban planning in Havana. At that time, Leonardo Morales, one of the most fast-reaching architects of this period, had documented the introduction in Cuba of the reminiscent historic styles, and lastly, the so-called new art, reflected on the architectonic trends. In 1929, Morales wrote in the Architects magazine, "The last period, therefore, has been a series of style fashions, but without an exact definition of time, since at the same time that a style was fashionable, others, having previously enjoyed that honor, were being constructed." Modern art, later called Art Deco in 1960s, was widely scattered all over the country as a symbol of the emerging modernity. Art Deco style did not stem from the theoretical program or homogeneous doctrine sustaining its production. Leisure or study trips abroad, visit by foreign artists and designers, the diffusion through specialized magazines, and the reviews of Cuban critics notably influenced the taste of local professionals and encouraged them to adopt the new aesthetic. Early works like the house for Francisco Argüelles in Miramar, Fifth Avenue, designed by Antonio Mendigutia and built in 1927, illustrate how the Cuban vanguard professionals embraced the new trend and skillfully handled its codes. According to the Cuban journal Arquitectura y Artes Decorativas, it was the first serious essay of modern architecture in this country. Art Deco left its mark on the design of furniture, pavements, monuments, sculptures, and gardens, as well as the large number of funerary monuments constructed in the Cuban cemeteries, persisting even until the 1950s. The new style regarded interior design as an important part of the building. Staggered floor plans to improve the natural lighting and ventilation are examples of the efforts to meet new design approaches. emerged the concept of inner spatiality and the interconnection of functions with different masses that gave the work new freedom in its composition. This is the plan of the apartment building Lopez-Serrano, one of the outstanding examples in this program. Artistic work supporting the architectonic solution were also creatively present. It was remarkable as the integration of all of the elements, both architectonic and artistic, the design of the Enrique Garcia Cabrera house by Maximiliano Borges del Junco in Vedado in 1938. By the way, we are sitting right now in one of the lodges of the house, and later you will have a brief tour on the house. Outstanding examples include also the Elvira Machado Maternity Hospital in Vedado by Govantes and Cavarroca in 1930. Govantes and Cavarroca film, by the way, was one of the most remarkable and spirited films in that period. Only in 1930, they were involved in the series of different kind of programs, in many of them in connection with the new Art Deco style. Also, the Maternity Hospital of Marianao by Emilio de Soto in 1940. So I would like to have a brief introduction about the variation in the Art Deco style in Havana. There are identified three different trends, characteristic. They are prominent in the context of Havana. There were the geometric trends, the aerodynamic, and the monumental ones. The geometric trend is mostly identified by its stylizing geometric form, simplified ornaments attached to the traditional figure, like triangle, circle. Then the repeated use of forms such as lightning, waves, plants, animals, among others. Another feature was the prominent verticality of the architectonic components, also the scale of the constructive elements. The second one, the aerodynamic trend, is related to the so-called streamlined modern style that came to Cuba via the Art Deco district of Miami Beach. It was characteristic, the massiveness and the rounded angles that soften the masses. This variable reproduces nautical form that reflect modern times. And the monumental trend is inspired by the form of classical architecture, with the predominance of simplified colonnades, arcades, and monumental porches of double or triple the heights of the single story, and the great lobbies of several levels that occupy the center of the spatial composition. The decoration consists of refined polished materials of varied colors and textures. There was even another variant with historical features inspired by the form and symbol of the pre-Columbian cultures or the local traditional architecture. There was found at the Lugardita movie theater with a clear reference to the Central American cultures. So then I will provide you with a brief tour about the different programs where Art Deco was adopted. First, maybe a kind of the introduction style was the area of the residence, the single family home. The most prestigious architect at that time always were involved in designing for upper class, but mainly in connection with the reference eclectic codes. Nevertheless, at that time, I mean 1920s, middle 1920s, decoration for very private spaces in some of those houses, like bathroom, maybe dressing room, were treated in the new modern style. The small palace of Catalina Laza and Juan Pedro Baró, 1927 in Vedado, is an entirely exceptional case. Was designed by the important firm and Cuban architect Govantes and Cavarrocas. And the beautiful exterior eclectic architecture that was inspired by the Renaissance in Florence is outshined by the modern style adopted in the interior, which includes exquisite furniture and an exceptional collection of wall and ceiling lamps, acknowledged as the genuine example of the French influence of Art Deco with the gorgeous design by the artist René Lalique. From the moment on, searching for a new vocabulary was evident in the design and construction of several houses for the upper middle class. So it's outstanding the way that in these new houses in El Vedado, any detail was, as Rosa was saying, the ironwork, the glasswork, the carpentry, the furniture was a set, a unit in connection with the influence from the French art. The second area in relationship with the same program were the small houses. These houses appear more frequently in neighborhoods like Vedado, Poli, Miramar, Santo Suarez, and in many other neighborhoods in the capital city. The program frequently include two separate homes in two-story building, and they were linked by the new aesthetic. I mean, no matter they were the ground floor and the second floor homes, the units was the style with the facade element and the spatial volumetric composition elements. Then following this same residential program were the apartment buildings. Apartment buildings was one of the typologies in which Art Deco most prevailed in different urban areas for middle and lower classes, and was the multifamily apartment building, especially occupying practically all the areas in the city. Diverse facades exhibit a greatest creativity in the design and concentration of ornamentation. Outstanding examples are the Rodriguez Vasquez building, 1941, with its incredible American Theater and other commercial services and a cafeteria on the ground floor. In addition, the Arenal complex, also 1941, in which the homonymous movie theater was located at the center of the plot, and the private residences and other services were remaining areas of the building. There were another unique examples, but in between those, the Lopez-Serrano building, completed in 1932 according to a design by Cuban firm Mira and Rosich. The building hides the setback of the architectural mass and the abundant decoration in the vestibule, which includes a nickel silver panel designed by Cuban artists, prominent at the time designer Enrique Garcia Cabrera, made this building exceptional. The Art Deco style also appeared in the flooring, ironwork, lamps, composed by polyhedral form, other many decorative details. The large numbers and variety of these structures make them one of the most valuable buildings collection for understanding the extent and popularity of Art Deco in Havana. The exterior walls, they were mainly covered by bitumen imitating stone and includes marble, mica, or conch fragments that produce brilliant specks in the wall finish. Likewise significant were the artistic carpentry and the iron and glasswork, which comprise a new catalog of geometric and stylizing forms. Many modest apartment buildings exemplify the great creativity in design and the exceptional talent of the inseparable trio in Havana, developers, designers, and builders during these 2 decades, I mean 1920s and 1930s. Special mention I deserve the bathrooms. As they began to be considered as exclusive spaces in the houses, with particular functional and sanitary requirements. They appear in the style contrasting colors and combination of lines and forms and marble and stucco and terrazzo in different shades and texture. This is one of the main examples in different programs, the residential, even the public programs. So speaking about public programs, public and semi-public buildings, in that period, activities grew all over the country. I mean, offices, public related with the commercial activities. And in accordance with this progress and modernization of the society, offices became ever more popular. And many developers chose specifically the Art Deco style for the designing of these new structures. The building, constructed by the Bacardi Rum Company in 1930, is the most outstanding example of this program. Located in Old Havana, the project was a result of a competition won by the architect Esteban Rodriguez Castel, Manuel de Tapia Ruano, and José Menéndez. It was conceived as a skyscraper with a ziggurat crown. The most lavish decoration is concentrated at the top. A bronze bat, the symbol of a company, rises from the tower. The polychrome finish of its facades was achieved with imported granite and marble, as well as a wide range of terracotta, ceramic, and bricks of various colors. The main floor contained the central vestibule, and a bar occupied the mezzanine. The area was conceived as an ornamental unit with exquisite stucco on floor and ceiling materials, as well as an outstanding ensemble of polyhedral lights of structural glass, door and window, grillwork, and furniture. Is the best collection in one unique space, where the most remarkable collaboration from abroad, I mean material, but production of the lighting fixtures and many other details, and still preserved. Now in this moment is under restoration, it's in the process of restoration. So other office buildings of great urban importance were the current Ministry of Labor and Social Security, the Grand Lodge of Cuba, and the Navy Building, which dominates the city landscape with their monumental presence. Entertainment venues such cinema, theaters, clubs, and casinos passionately and elegantly embrace the modern Art Deco. Coinciding with the arrival of sound cinema, the style was selected for majority of a new structure during the 1930s and 1940s, recreating elaborate interior design. We could mention, for instance, among the most known cinemas and theater, the Lugardita movie theater by Govantes y Cabarroca in 1930, with interior beautiful sculpture. This is specifically that trend that was connected with historical influence in the style Art Deco, one of the few examples of these trends in Havana. Then we can mention the America Theater that was in that beautiful America building that was designed by Fernando Martinez and Pascual de Rojas in 1941, with great, beautiful interiors of the hall of the movie theater, with exceptional materials and colors, the flooring, the furniture. Is a real museum remaining the greatest style of Art Deco in Havana. So there were also many other buildings that in other public programs, and the Arena movie theater that was part of that complex that I was mentioned a few minutes ago. And then were many other programs that also adopted the Art Deco. In between them were social organizations, clinic, hospital, and other health facilities. I want to mention in between those Casa de las Americas, that was the former Association of American Writers and Artists, and was a late example of adapting existing building, but following the Art Deco. Was designed by the architect Ramon Bustos Monzon at the end of the G Avenue in Everado. Some of the most notable hospitals at that time were the pediatric hospital that unfortunately remained very bad construction state, and was the decision to demolish it in 2015. The Elvira Machado Maternity Hospital, current America Arias in Everado, both designed in 1930 by the remarkable firm of architect Covantes and Cabarroca. Also was very outstanding example in the connection in between architecture, composition, and interior and outside participation of art, the Workers' Maternity Hospital in Marianao by the architect Emilio de Soto in 1940. The same way they were designed stores, schools, pharmacies, and churches, and were other public buildings with significant Art Deco ornamental elements. I could mention examples like the bookstore La Moderna Poesía by architect Vicente Llarena y Solís from Mira and Rothschild's firm in Obispo Boulevard in Old Havana. At the same way that Art Deco was covering the most important public and residential programs, were the churches, but also was embracing the factories and warehouses. In that field, Art Deco was also the favorite style for lending prestige to diverse industrial facilities. In between those, I could mention an exceptional case that is the project for the office and printing workshop of the Cuban newspaper El País, designed by the architect Cristobal Diaz and Rafael de Cárdenas in 1941, that is located in the Reina Street in central Havana. Functionally, they were combined the production and the administrative activities. And then the building is especially significant for its wide glass facade, bordered by two decorative friezes with motifs that reappear from the outside in the interior, a waiting hall, as well as the use of materials such as the colored terrazzo and nickel steel and special stupos. Then, finishing this small tour by the period, we could mention the urban public spaces. They were covering areas such monuments, sculptural works, and urban furniture, all of them conceived of a unit in the same new modern style. And thanks to the collaboration of many artists and artisans, they were decorating many public squares, parks, and avenues. This is the complex of Finlay Square in Marianao in 1944. Then we have the remarkable, outstanding example in funerary architecture in the Column Necropolis. That is, we can say that is authentic Art Deco theme museum, comprising vaults and mausoleums belonging to social organizations and institutions as well as upper class families. The greatest number of treasures from both architectonic and artistic point of view are found in its main streets. Also, less frequent tombs of persons of more modest means similarly adopted this modern style. And there are significant examples of mausoleums covered with rich materials like marble, granite, and Labrador stone. It's a huge collection of open art, also combining the architecture of mausoleums and the work of outstanding artists in between the country, but both from outside the country. A specific mention I want to do about the use of color in the style in Havana. The Art Deco architecture in the context of the Cuban capital was not so related with the use of color. The records confirm that the taste of architect was for stony shade and texture, especially creamy or gray tones, obtained mainly by preparing plasters based on stone color, using special sand and some additive. It was also common to add brilliant particles of diverse materials to be plastered that sparkle when they struck by the sun. And when employed, color was mainly achieved with polychromatic ceramic materials like marble, granite, or other colored stones. Peculiar example was the Apostolado School in Vedado, built by Louis Pesant in 1937, with the intense red bricks walls. The prime example that was the Bacardi Building, where the use of color on the exterior is perhaps the most sophisticated design feature on the entire building. Color is also apparent in relief fabricated from natural or artificial materials and applied to the walls. The interior design was in connection with the same approaches to the style. The many surviving interiors of these buildings reveal a treasure of former elements. Art Deco features appear more frequently in pavement and ceiling designs, in carpentry and iron and glasswork, in furniture and lighting. It was the interior public spaces where the color was used more freely, mainly in flooring and ceiling. Works as such as statues, sculpture, artistic panels, and mural painting lent a distinctive ambient of those interiors. So we could say that this, so I just, because this is very brief presentation, no more than 20 minutes, I need to fit to the time, but we can say that there is a great collection of Art Deco works in Havana that is the face and cultural soul of the time, in convivence, of course, with many other trends, eclectic trends mainly, and later with the modern architecture. But specifically, Art Deco is the soul of that time. And, you know, I think it deserved to be known. It deserved to be protected and to be bequeathed to the future as very valuable patrimony. But unfortunately, not all of the significant Art Deco buildings survive today. And others also conserve, have totally or partially lost their principal distinguished characteristic. Even so, the quantity, variety, and quality of the buildings influenced by this style are extremely important for the study and understanding of the historical period and the society that sustained it. To recover, I think, and I'm mentioning the last epilogue work of Maria Elena Martín Sequeiro in her architectural Art Deco guide of Havana. She said that to recover the great collection of Art Deco works in an advanced state of disrepair in the city of Havana requires, first, a passionate heart that will fight for their restoration. Second, a qualified eye to identify elements that may or should remain within the collapsed building and structural deterioration in order to make rescue operation realistic and feasible. And last but not least, a generous pocket to effectively grant and distribute the many material and human resources required in each case. This trio is essential for initiating the process required to redeem this important portion of this national cultural patrimony and incorporate it into the active life of Cuban society without losing its original charm and value. So I think for the beginning of this panel is enough. So thank you very much. Let's continue with our colleague, Pepe Menéndez.
So hello everyone, I'm very happy to be part of this session, of this program. It's actually my first Zoom experience, so I hope it runs well. Really happy to have been invited by Copperbridge Foundation to celebrate 10th anniversary. Congratulations, honestly, to the foundation and to the wonderful program they always host. And also my gratitude to everyone who helped making this possible. Gio Darder and all the people, his staff and contributors and everyone who is in there today to make this possible. My presentation goes on Enrique Garcia Cabrera. I'm going to talk about him, but first let me say, please excuse any mistake I might do in my speaking today, including this awkward German accent that I can't avoid. This is something deserves another explanation, but it's not going to be today. So please, I hope I make myself understand and excuse my funny accent. Today is on Enrique Garcia Cabrera, his work and his legacy. This is the cover of the book we made on his work, on his life. The authors, as you can read on the cover, are Olympia Cigarroa and José Menéndez. So Olympia is my mother, and me, Pepe Menéndez. I'm the graphic designer, and together with her, we signed that book. But actually, the book is a project far more than just me and her. It's a work that also includes my wife. You can see the next picture. This is my wife, Laura Llopis, who did actually the design of the book. She made this wonderful type design for the cover. So both deserve all the merit of this product that we finally were able to produce 4 years ago. And eventually it was not just me and her and both, but also the whole family. It's a family project, including my father and my sister here. You can see my father, Carlos Menéndez, in the studio that is behind us today. You got a glimpse of this studio. This is our house. And so as a family project, we were able to pay back to Enrique Garcia Cabrera the wonderful opportunity he gave us to live in this house and to enjoy his legacy as an artist. This is me as a child. I was born in this house. I'm 54 years now old. So this is me and one of my sisters who were also part of the book. This is in the garden, in what and the remains of this open space culture the house had. So I have spent all my life here. I'm a graphic designer. I was born in this house. And as Universo mentioned, this is one of the examples of an Art Deco house, actually a small building, 2 floors, and with a strong facade and with 2 reliefs in the facade. On the bottom is a relief by a Cuban sculpture named Rodolfo Tardo, and up is a relief by Garcia Cabrera himself. Next picture will show you a little bit of the inside of the house. This is the living room and also part of the dining room, and you see a little bit of the stair. So the house has a very nice and partially preserved strong Art Deco style in terms of the floors, in terms of the very accentuated vertical lines in the studio. Although it was a small house, it has a big garden, and in the garden, a huge space. This was the artist's studio as a painter. I would say this is a space, particularly this studio, is a unique piece in this city and eventually in this country. I don't find any other example similar to this, meaning a space that was originally created as a painting studio with specific light privileged conditions and that is still keeping the same use and basically the same form today. This is a picture of 1938, the date which the house was built. You can see there the light, the huge window and the front, and also in the ceiling, and these wood elements in the ceilings. And you can see there also the aisle and the big canvas that Enrique Garcia Cabrera was painting in the year he made the house built by architect Max Borges Sr. Next picture will show you him posing for a reportage in a newspaper, and the clip says, very small type there, the outstanding artist Enrique Garcia Cabrera, teacher at San Alejandro Art Academy. So he was a painter, teacher, and illustrator. He became a prominent name of his generation, as in an extent that you can see here, a painting that he made became later a stamp. So he gained a strong name, successful artist, successful painter among upper class people who could pay for his work or who could commission him to decorate spaces. Yes, please, next. He was born in Havana, and he studied here in the Art Academy of San Alejandro, and eventually finished his training as an artist in Europe, in Rome, and in Paris. This is him very young as a poet, so he was a creative soul. Next picture will show you early drawings, also published in magazines of his time. So here again, poems and early drawings, early art by Enrique Garcia Cabrera. He returned from Europe with the impress that made on him the new art that was in Europe in the first decades of the 20th century evolving. So he returned being a different kind of artist, and this can be seen in the work he produced. He married the lady in the previous picture, Maria Luisa Cigarroa, who was my mother's aunt. So actually, Enrique Garcia Cabrera and me, we don't share any blood. It just happened that he and Maria Luisa didn't have any children, so we ended up living and inheriting his house and everything he left when he died in 1949. So the artist was born in 1893 and passed 1949. Once he was, at the time he was living in this house, he was already a very well-known artist with lots of work in public spaces, as Universo mentioned before, and contributing strongly with magazines and newspapers in Havana. He was also a teacher, and here in this photo we can see him as a teacher, art teacher at the Art Academy. Funny, only girls, only women in this class, evidently separated classes. So he was also a very proud teacher and became, in the 40s, even director of the Art Academy of San Alejandro. And then, yes, he was, his third part, if we can say so, was being a commercial artist. I think that he considered himself number one, a painter, and number two, a teacher, and number three, a commercial artist. But history has this funny outcomes of things, and now I would say he was number one, a wonderful commercial artist and illustrator, number two, a teacher, and number three, a painter. Let's see a little bit of his work. This is the canvas, a tondo, as we call this round canvas in Spanish, that is being today hanged and exhibited in National Fine Arts Museum. So at the time he was alive, none of his painting was exhibited in National Fine Arts Museum. In 2002, with renovation of the National Fine Arts Museum, he had finally a piece in that permanent exhibition. But he had paintings in different private spaces, like this huge canvas disappeared at a club, a private club at the Havana Club house in Havana. There's another view of that you can see, a frontal black and white reproduction. Next, please. We can see the painting as a whole. So this is an example of paintings he did for big companies or big families, rich families of his time. Then we can see a little bit of his teaching side. This is a book that he created for National Arts Academy, where he created the decorative arts department. And finally, another picture of him teaching. There is he at the very end, next to the door in his class in San Alejandro Art Academy. And his third phase, and for me the most interesting part, is his work as commercial artist. Nowadays we would say illustrator and graphic designer, and in this time we would say commercial artist. He created hundreds of advertising brochures, very elegant ones. I have picked up examples in which you can see his Art Deco style, or illustration for magazines, for covers, like this one for a magazine 1920, Universo. Again, and next please. And for example, visual, what we could call today corporate identity. This is a logo for a radio station from which we have this wonderful image of passion for speed and futuristic images, typical also from Art Deco. And then we have an envelope, stamped envelope. So as I said, corporate identity. Oh, we missed one. And this is a very beautiful inside. This is the studio of this radio station, in which at the very end you can see a huge panel. This space disappeared. We have never been able to locate where this was, but the logo became part of the decoration of this radio station. He created also illustrations like political caricature or political illustration, fashion illustration, as this beautiful one here for a brochure, or etiquettes or labels for products. What else? What else do we have here? Next, please. Then we have also examples of poster. This never printed poster of 1937, announcing the Carnival or February Fiestas in English in Havana, 1937. Many of these pieces, we keep the original drawings here, and some of them we keep just reproduction, like this one, an outstanding example of this compendium, actually, a compendium of Art Deco solutions, no? The verticality, the circles, also the female. He became very popular for his female figure. Here we have an example Universo already mentioned, the lobby, the metal panel at the Lopez-Serrano building. And there is another image that shows us a comment on the reportage by the Guardian newspaper, British newspaper, commenting on the marvelous metal panel at the Lopez-Serrano building by Enrique Garcia Cabrera. So, next one. As I said, he was very popular for his female representation. In some cases, like this one, a charming, elegant, glamorous woman, and in some other more humoristic, also a picaresque little bit for La Semana weekly publication in Havana. Next, but in all cases, he is notable for the quality of his drawing, the beauty of his compositions, and the great hand he has as a drawer and as an artist in general. Here, his fantastic solution for selling. This is an advertising for a cigar brand, and presenting a couple flying over Havana port entrance. You can see Morro Castle down there, and the man and the woman in love. Love is in the air, we could say, but the guy is smoking a cigar while piloting the plane, which is a very maybe creative, maybe absurd idea, but shows the fantasy of this man and also the passion for speed of typical of his time and of this Art Deco style. Visible in very early works, and I think him and other maybe 3 or 4 more artists, among them big names like Conrado Massaguer, were the ones that actually introduced the visual codes of the new representation that eventually other artists, painters did years later. They were pioneers, really introducing these new forms that were born in Europe and other parts, and they, let's say, brought them to the Cuban audience very early in the very early decades of the 20th century. So he remains for us as an artist who created so much beauty, so much elegancy, so much sophistication, and for this he should be remembered. We have done in the family, please, it's the next one. We have done in the family as much as we can to preserve his name and to make his name more known among the new generations. With the help of city historian Eusebio Leal, we were able to put a plate in Old Havana last year to mark the house and where he lived in Old Havana. So at least for pedestrians who pass through this street, people would know better about his name. We have done as much as we can to make his legacy survive, to preserve the house, and to keep his memory and his papers and his space and his images for the future, and to celebrate the beauty of Art Deco and the privilege we have had to live in this house and to share, like today, his name and his work with you. Thank you. But I would like to take you to a small tour. I think there is a tour at the end of my presentation. So if we are ready, please join us to this low budget, humble tour through the house.
Thank you so much, Pepe. That was fantastic. We have a lot of questions from the audience, but I wondered if we could bring Universo back as well, so we could have you both here to answer questions. And maybe I want to pose one or two questions to you myself before we go to audience questions. Universo, we're looking for you. There you are.
Yes.
So you've presented some amazing visuals of Havana. And I'm so pleased, Universo, by the amount of detail that you showed, because in fact, in both of this work, there was so much to do with the immensity of detail. Your house, certainly the Pepe, the house, is about its decorative details. And I know that's one of the, in preservation, that's always one of the thorny aspects of the work, getting the skilled material and individual, there's the materials and the skilled people that are required to do this work. And would you comment a bit about that, about the art, let's just stick with the Art Deco specifically, because so much of that material work is important. I mean, I remember, for example, those beautiful nickel silver elevator panels that you showed from the Lopez-Serrano. A few years ago, there were similar panels on the elevators themselves, and when they renovated the elevators, they were removed. And does anyone know where the panels are? Because that's sometimes a key problem where people don't quite see that aspect of it.
So I can say that, Rosa, you remember what, when began the renovation on the historic center by Eusebio Leal, he
Yes.
created the workshop schools to train young people in all the specialties of restoration. So we, you know, we may say that in principle, we are leading with iron, we are leading with glass, we are leading with metal, we are leading with plaster, with bitumen plaster, with the stucco. But as you said, it's specifically approach to the Art Deco. I think would be necessary, I somehow mentioned it at the end, to create a specific group or even organization to perform specific programs for recover those skills in relationship with the specific works on Art Deco. The stucco are totally different. You remember I showed a stucco or bitumen plaster with the addition of mica, with the addition of small pieces of glass. This is like, you know, like a huge laboratory, experimental laboratory that should be reestablished to beginning to prepare people to be ready for that. I mentioned that currently it's gonna be the beginning of the process for restoration of the Bacardi Building, no more and no less. I don't know how, you know, I don't know how, because no, you remember when I began the renovation as the main architect of the National School of Art, that was a discovery for all of us, because it was specific approach to renovation. In that case, was brick, was ceramic tile. And you may say, what is different in between what and another brick? But the definition of the architectonic work was specifically the use of that material, the way it was used by the architects. That the same happened with Art Deco. The way the material was used, the way the metal, the nickel or the steel of the bronze was polished, wasn't the same way that was used in the modern architecture or in the eclectic one architecture.
And as you mentioned, because you mentioned the Escuela Taller is specifically training people to work on colonial buildings. And these modern buildings are very different. Nickel silver is a totally, you know, is a total 20th century iteration. It's a, you know, you see it all over New York City, for example. And restoring that requires like a detail to science as well as the hand skill. And when you mention these mortar finishes that have like bits of mica and whatnot in it, one of the things we find here, where there's, you know, like in the United States and particularly say the Northeast, or Los Angeles or Chicago, where the most sophisticated types of building restoration are done, is that contractors who are very skilled may not even be able to do it. They have to take the time and practice those finishes. And that, I think, is a big deal, because, you know, when you have a situation where there isn't a lot of money to do this kind of work, those things fall by the wayside. But the importance is in those details.
The first I think is the will to do it, but
Yeah.
then we need support, of course, a
Exactly.
big support, a big pocket, you know, to do it. And also the training of professionals. I mean, the architects, the engineer, because in the middle, so we have the Bacardi Building. Two things, Rosa. I would like to say hello to Gustavo Lopez. He was in the last slide on my presentation. He is part of the Havana Deco group, and he was an important part of the recent works about the protection of Havana Art Deco. In connection with that, I want to say that in parallel, I think would be need to prepare professionals, and would be need to prepare the recovery of workers' skills, because the first step is the eye, to identify the damages, to identify the values of, or to identify the way the material or the way the elements they were mutating through the time. You know, in any building in Havana, is like a detectivist activity to get the real originality or authenticity of the many elements, because or they were painted or repainted, or they were covered with another materials. So restoration skills, conservation skills are very important, both professional or manual, I mean.
Exactly. And this is really, you know, something that is critical in these buildings, because if you don't do the materials conservation investigation that you're talking about, you're going to have people throwing up their hands and saying, oh, we can't achieve the finish. We can't repair the terrazzo, because it's very hard to repair terrazzo, but it's doable if you know what you're doing. Anyway, I want to ask a question of Pepe that came up on the list from Rafael Diaz Casas. Asks, in the 30s, Garcia Cabrera was one of the founders and active members of the Cuban National Socialist Party, the fascist party. And he was wondering how long those political and philosophical beliefs extended in his life and influenced his work.
We have very little information on that point. There are really few examples of works he did that connected him to this political preferences. We have no, from the letters we have, or for the notes the widow left to the family, there is really very few traces of that. We heard from that, but no, really, we haven't any confirmation in terms of documents that so far confirms us how much deep he was in that and how much prominent in his life. There is no article, for example. We have several in the book. There are 6 different articles on his work, and no one mentions that. So for us, it's a data that is there, but we haven't been able to dig deeper on that.
Where is this work published then? It would be interesting to know, because it's not an insignificant thing for someone to be a fascist. Like right now, in a number of American, US-based institutions, they are revisiting the work of Philip Johnson within that context. And his name is being taken off of buildings at Harvard and hopefully at MoMA for that very reason, because that's, you know, it's not insignificant. So it would be interesting. But Rafael, I wonder if you have some information about that as well. he said he can forward some information.
Okay, thank you.
That's fascinating. Someone else asked if Universo can say something about the photo, about the former motor center building, Motocentro.
So as part of the collection, it's of course occupied a special place in the context. So, you know, mainly I always try to approach to any specific work of this period, separating both the way the architecture was displayed and the way the complementary artworks or artistic work were introduced into the work. So in that sense, the Motor Center is a kind of specific example of that approach to the style, you know? I don't know if there is some specific question.
No, I think they were just asking what you have in terms of.
Or they want to see something. Because there are so many works that I couldn't show. It's impossible to show the whole collection, you know?
Of course. And then someone, I'm trying to look for all the questions. Someone wanted to know if either of you, probably Pepe, this question will be directed to you. If you have any information on José Francisco Yorca, a graphic artist from who went to San Alejandro, is there any information about him? He seems to be the relative of one of our attendees.
José Francisco Yorca, never heard.
All right.
No, doesn't sound familiar. Is it from the same period of Garcia Cabrera, or I don't know? Never heard his name.
Yeah. Well, moving on. We've had another question that asked about the Enrique Cabrera mural in the building that was knocked down, the hospital that was knocked down. Was the mural saved?
I think it's a confusion. The hospital that was knocked down isn't the hospital with the mural.
Got it. Okay.
Two different buildings. The mural is still there because the hospital is still there.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
The maternity hospital of Mariana.
Right. And someone else wonders if there is any connection later, say in the 1950s, between Eastern European architects and Cuban architects.
In the 50s, the most remarkable connection was through European established in America, Richard Neutra, and his famous house in Country Club neighborhood.
Right.
That was the real outstanding connection. But anyway, Havana School of Architecture that was opened in beginning the 20th century, young architects in 1930s, but mainly in 1940s, there was a group of young architects that were very concerned about the research and experiment from the history of the national trends or styling to move forward with the new trends, with the modern trends. And in that way, students, some teachers at the School of Architecture, they wanted to find connection, some connection with Frank Lloyd Wright, with Walter Gropius, and even some of those remarkable architects. Somehow there was a meeting in Havana, and there were some of those remarkable architects. But those young architects always, or the student of architecture, they were attentive to any international congress or a celebration or meeting to be part of that. So I could say that the 40s was the transitional period in between the end of Art Deco and the continuity in the new modernistic or modern rational period in the Cuban architecture. And there were a group of young concerned architects that wanted to be in the middle of that processes that was happening abroad, that was happening in Europe, or that was happening in the United States mainly. And they wanted to meet those architects, and they invited those architects to visit Havana and to meet with them. And for that feeding, they began to experiment in the search of a new way for Cuban architecture.
I'd like to, I know that we have someone there with Pepe Menéndez. I believe that, again, in the spirit of Art Deco and preservation, I met this lovely lady who is so spirited and is so careful to preserve the legacy of Cabrera that I wanted to introduce her to our followers and our members. And this is Olympia. So Olympia, will you please say hello to us and give us a little bit of your story, because you're just so fabulous.
My goodness, my story is already so well known. I can't add one word to it.
I'm sure you can, please. I ask. I beg of you. Tell us about what you do daily with the house, and dime. Habla conmigo, dime. Take this time to say hello.
Gio, what can I say? What can I say? Oh, your beard. Oh my God. Oh,
We can start with that.
just like my husband.
Oh yes.
I think this is a COVID product, a COVID-19 product.
Well, Olympia, you've had about 20 people in your home. What do you think about now having over 175 people in your home at once, like we did tonight?
Oh, that is marvelous. That's I mean, that is the future. That is modern times, the technique. What can I say? Too much for me. Thank you for always remembering us.
You're quite welcome.
Congratulations to the Universo.
Yes. Yes.
Well, wonderful. You've all been wonderful. I want to take this opportunity to thank Rosa Lowinger, of course, Universo Garcia, Pepe Menéndez, and you, Olympia, and of course, all our collaborators tonight. Again, thank you for bringing the spirit of Art Deco to everyone. And again, thank you, and more celebrations of Copperbridge to come. We're doing next year. Next year, we're presenting on the, I believe the 12th, the Rio Platense. So that's our next event. And again, happy holidays to all, and happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, everybody.